Hey everybody, Josh Sigurdson, World Alternative Media here, and P. Diddy has been sentenced to over 4 years in prison. This is breaking news as we hear of the wrapping up of the sentencing hearing for Sean Diddy Combs, sentenced to 50 months in prison for prostitution-related conviction. Of course, his mother has left court, obviously distraught, and of course, this is on top of a $500,000 fine. It's big news for one of the biggest celebrities in the industry, but there's a lot more to this than meets the eye, my friends. And that has to do with the blackmail ring that we are quite positive he was part of. According to many around him, he certainly was. And also, what happens to all of the people that were complicit in having sex with underage kids when it came to his freak off parties. Allegedly, of course, he was let off of a lot of charges earlier this year regarding, sex trafficking. But of course, we need to understand where this trial was dropped off, who dropped the ball, why, and who he works for. So we're going to go into this and more today, my friends. Before we do, I urge you to check those links below and help support us if you can. We have gogetfunding.com, Patreon, and Subscribestar. We appreciate any help we can get. We are always in very much need of being funded because, of course, we tell the truth and we don't push one side or the other. In the paradigm, we want to bring you the truth. And for that reason, we are shadow banned on both mainstream and alternative platforms. We have a Bitcoin address that you could scan on the screen here, or donate to our Bitcoin address in the description of the video as well. And we have a Cointree link with a bunch of different cryptocurrencies that you could donate in if you please, including privacy coins. Make sure to hit that like button on BitChute and Rumble, and of course on YouTube. But make sure if you're watching on YouTube or band.video, for example, which is about to go down, to go and subscribe to us on Rumble and BitChute at World Alternative Media. Hit the subscribe button, hit that notification bell. We truly appreciate it. Check those links below. We also have merchandise at our Teespring store. Now let's get into this. So, Sean Diddy Combs sentenced to 50 months in prison for prostitution-related conviction. It says that Sean Diddy Combs has been sentenced to 50 months in prison for his conviction on 2 counts of transportation to engage in prostitution. He must also pay a $500,000 fine. He addressed court earlier and begged judge for mercy, calling his actions disgusting, shameful, and sick. Combs apologized to the victims and all the victims of domestic violence. Substantial sentence, describing his decision. Judge Aaron Subramanian, that's that's a crazy name. Subramanian said a substantial sentence must be given to send a message to abusers and victims alike that abuse against women is met with real accountability. In final remarks to Combs, the judge noted Combs will still have a life after prison, noting that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. Isn't that perfect for a blackmail artist, which I definitely believe he was. I believe that Diddy is very much like Epstein in the fact that I believe he was involved in a blackmail ring in order to get people to do what they are told. Epstein worked for Mossad. He openly acknowledged that to his exes. He also got a plea deal over this. And according to a former bodyguard, they claim Sean Combs possesses blackmail tapes of prominent figures, including princes and preachers. A lot of people were involved in this. Now, the Department of Homeland Security, a federal agent, seized computers and electronic devices during their operation and their investigation into Diddy. But if he works for the government, for intelligence agencies, then one should ask, for example, would you trust the state to expose the blackmail that they themselves have? Much like Epstein's tapes from his Manhattan apartment, which were seized by the FBI, went missing, much like a lot of other things that now we're all told to just ignore, as Trump calls his own supporters that wanted him to release the Epstein files weaklings and claims there's nothing there. And in fact, many people in the government are now saying that they think he was innocent, that Epstein was innocent. So what happened to the thousands of children who were trafficked? I mean, it's insane. There is no justice when you depend on the government to, of course, bring justice to the government. Problem, reaction, solution, repeat, my friends. It keeps us on our knees. Now, as this story out of 100% fedup.com says, it shows this is a breaking news alert. Sean Diddy Combs has been sentenced to 50 months. That's 4 years and 2 months in prison. And of course, this is after horrifying videos had come out of him beating a girl in the hallway, which Kanye West, weird, says it's justified. And haven't we all done that before? No. I have never beaten a woman. And I've never forced a bunch of underage girls into a massive freakout parties where everyone got drugged without knowing it, including both men and women, allegedly, including Justin Bieber, allegedly. And of course, this weird stuff that was in the drink, some pink fluid that people drank and didn't know that they're being date raped, allegedly. CNN reports the judge called this hard times. Sean Diddy Combs has been sentenced to 50 months or just over 4 years in prison for his conviction on 2 counts of transportation to engage in prostitution. Federal District Judge Aaron Subramanian announced that the decision Friday, saying a substantial sentence must be given to send a message to abusers and victims alike that abuse against women is met with real accountability. The judge noted that this is hard time away from Combs' family, but also noting Combs will have a life after prison. Combs' lawyer had argued he should be released almost immediately, asking the judge to sentence him to no more than 14 months, including time served. Prosecutors said he should have faced more than 11 years in prison. Combs was found guilty of 2 counts of transporting individuals for prostitution in July, but was acquitted of more serious sex trafficking and racketeering charges that could have led to a life sentence. They make an example out of people, but I also want to point out, who knows if he's actually serving time. My mind is open, but I mean, from what I've seen, a lot of people say it's a distraction, that he was innocent. The guy was involved in shootings that put other people in prison back in the early 2000s, including up and coming rappers who were thrown in prison because Diddy allegedly shot up a club, which hit people. And in many cases, he's been accused of murder multiple times. Sean Diddy Combs made a statement in court amid his sentencing. It says, Diddy says, they want you to make an example of me. I want you to think about making an example of what a person can do if they get another chance. Consider the beautiful children who spoke for me. Okay, another chance. This is after he got how many chances? Including potentially murdering people. Again, allegedly. Raping countless men and women. Again, this has the hallmarks of a government operation to gather blackmail. All the celebrities and politicians, royal family members that were involved in this. Now, just because you went to one of his parties does not mean that you're a part of this, that you've hurt people, you touched people inappropriately, any of that. However, I want to point out, as I've been to a Mike Tyson party before. Mike Tyson had been to freak offs. When I was at the Mike Tyson party, I never saw anything crazy. Some women in bikinis walking around serving drinks. I never saw anything crazy, though. Maybe I've missed the crazier parties when I used to live in Las Vegas. But I will say that just because you've been to some of these places doesn't mean you're involved in that. But I will say, when you have these cameras in every single room, it tells me that's a blackmail operation. They're getting powerful people. And when you get that blackmail on people, then you have people on their knees and dependent on whatever word you tell them to say. I was watching a part of a podcast earlier on with Jimmy Kennedy where he was talking to an expert on this, where they say you have the honeypots, you have the gay pots, you have the pedo pots. And basically it is different levels of blackmail and sting. And again, when people say, well, Trump is compromised, and then other people say, well, Trump, it didn't touch kids. I say, maybe he didn't. I don't know. I mean, he had a lawsuit between, him and Epstein were both defendants in it, where they were sued by a 12-year-old girl for allegedly molesting, and there was a settlement out of court. But with that said, it doesn't need to be a child. It could just be that he's compromised because he was working with Miss Teen and Miss America and Miss Universe and all that kind of stuff. You honestly think he, as a billionaire, never, ever slept with models? Of course he did. He openly says he did. So now all it takes is one video of it. And why would he want that video out? He will do whatever he needs to do to make sure that video isn't out. And now we know that Israel is a major part of blackmailing politicians in the U.S. And we know what Trump has done for Israel in the past several months, including now he's getting nominated for a peace prize from Netanyahu, but including obviously bombing Iran and giving Hellfire missiles to them and calling for a full annexation, though he's recently pulled that back slightly. But with this peace deal, we'll see what happens. The point is, there's clearly some kind of subversion And with people like Epstein, who clearly worked for the Israeli government. I don't think Epstein was even a real person. I don't think that was his name. I don't think there's any evidence of him working on Wall Street. And then Ghislaine Maxwell trying to get a pardon. To me, it just seems like typical Epstein in his New Mexico compound, which was complete with a schoolhouse, a saloon, and an underground party tunnel system. He had an airstrip and everything. Bill Clinton and Chelsea Clinton, and yes, I mean his daughter Chelsea Clinton, went there on vacation regularly every year. And that's not including his island and his Manhattan apartment, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But his New Mexico compound, when the camera guys came in to hook up all the video cameras, they went up to Epstein and said, "Hey, where do I put these cameras?" And Epstein said, "Just follow the paperwork," because he wasn't the one that was really in charge. It was a blueprint by the government to get cameras everywhere so they have footage of people doing things that they don't want out, and they can use that as blackmail. And when we see the fact that Diddy had the exact same thing going on, it tells me the exact same thing was going on. I believe that we are witnessing a guy who was involved in a government blackmail operation. And of course, he's going to get off pretty scot-free, but they can't just kill him like Epstein, or allegedly kill him, or make it look like he died or whatever, because people are too onto things. So then they'll say, oh, he's in prison for a few years. Watch him not actually even be in prison, and watch him actually be doing quite well outside somewhere on a beach somewhere under witness protection. I could be totally wrong about that. Maybe they are just throwing him under the bus because he's done so many stupid things publicly. However, they threw this case like crazy. Sean Diddy Combs' verdict is a blow to federal prosecutors, analysts say. The jury in the Blockbuster trial ultimately rejected prosecutors' assertion that the hip-hop mogul ran a racketeering and sex trafficking scheme. Of course, he got all these not guilty verdicts earlier on this year. Count 1, racketeering and conspiracy, not guilty. Count 2, sex trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion, not guilty. Count 3, transportation to engage in prostitution, guilty. Count 4, sex trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion, not guilty. And count 5, transportation to engage in prostitution, guilty. So he had 2 counts of transportation to engage in prostitution, and then a bunch of others that say that he was sex trafficking. Well, when you are taking people and forcing them against their will to have sex with people, and you're using this as blackmail against him, not only is that sex trafficking, that's a blackmail operation. You know, there's countless examples of people saying that he was involved in sex trafficking. We have even Suge Knight has spoken about this quite a few times in recent days from prison. To me, it's clear. There is no justice. We don't find justice from asking the state to prosecute themselves. That is where people go very wrong in this. They aren't going to prosecute themselves. And the amount of other sex traffickers out there right now is insane. I mean, I went to the police back in 2009 about Peter Nygard in Winnipeg, Canada, who's a billionaire who had an island close to Epstein and knew Epstein. I've actually gotten to talk with his son a few times. He's a really nice guy and had no idea. Obviously, he was far removed from his father, but has been trying to give to charities and help people that have been trafficked as children, which is great. But Peter Nygard called himself a vampire. I went to police. Like, he wanted to actually drink blood. I went to police in 2009 about him because I had an ex who, when she was 14, she got allegedly raped by Peter Nygard. I was laughed out of the police station. Around that same time, I learned about Jeffrey Epstein, 2009, and I was following his case. And people call me a crazy conspiracy theorist for years. And then in 2016, it started to blow up. And then in 2019, he gets arrested. And then by, late 2019, I think September, October, they say that he, or maybe even August, they say that he killed himself, which of course isn't true. They say under the Trump administration, they say, we didn't have any videotapes. They went missing. Then they say, oh, we found the tapes. Then they say the tapes show nothing, and they cut out a bunch of the tapes. They say there's a list. We're going to release the list. They get into office. They say we have the list on my desk. Then they put out a fully redacted, I mean, every word redacted thing to a bunch of shill pretend alternative journalists. Then they say they lost the list. Then they say there never was a list. Now they're saying that potentially he was innocent and that he did commit suicide. Why would he commit suicide if he's innocent? I mean, it's so fucking stupid. Stop depending on the state to punish the state, because that is what it is. It's clear. We're dealing with blackmail artists, and they're not going to release the files and videos of they themselves doing these things. And by the way, even if they weren't caught by Epstein, there's probably blackmail on them, whether it be digital or hidden cameras. I mean, who knows? Maybe they're putting cameras in politicians' toilets without them knowing. I mean, whatever they need to say, hey, don't do this or else we will release this footage to the public. And when people say, well, show us an example of these videos ever being used, actually blackmail people where people went against it and it got released. Well, Diddy beating this woman, for one. We have Glenn Greenwald a few months ago on video in a tutu saying some really creepy things. And I like a lot of what Glenn Greenwald has done over the years. I'm not attacking him, but he said, I don't care if you have blackmail, release it. And then look what came out. And I mean, again, I'm sure there's a lot more of this going around. And I've seen some horrifying videos. Look at Mel Gibson. Look at what they released years and years ago against people like, well, I don't know, what they used against Michael Jackson. So again, I want to be clear here. We don't know exactly where this is going, but I do know that we shouldn't be trusting the government to, actually bring justice to these situations. Okay. And I think that we are walking lockstep into a technocratic world order and then turning a blind eye as to how this happens. Why does every politician go along with the same narrative from one side or the other with slight nuances? Well, because they are blackmailed, because they are controlled. There is no government. It is subverted and controlled. And the narratives were written long ago, and they want to write the script out and make sure the script sticks to the script. And they'll stop at nothing to do that, including killing people, including causing civil war and destruction and chaos to bring in order and bring in emergency orders and all these different things. And we're witnessing that right now, from culture wars to the push for a manufactured world war to pandemics to, what we see with cyber attacks to things like the collapse of the banking system and the dollar and the replacement with CBDCs and digital IDs, which they are putting out right now. Digital IDs are being rolled out by mandate in the UK right now. It's all real. It's all happening. Question is, will we be able to trace back why this is happening? And yes, I think it's pretty clear. So Diddy, 4 years in prison, more than that. Probably going to be treated pretty well there. Or they will kill him and allegedly, quote unquote, like not actually kill him, but, claim he committed suicide or died. Because if they're going to go so far, honestly, as to say that Epstein might have been innocent, but then he killed himself, I mean, how stupid do they think we are? Anyway, I figured I'll end it on that. The whole thing has been a shit show from the beginning, and I'm tired of putting up with these narratives, which on both sides always appear to be totally untrue. But alas, I hope you guys help support us in independent media as we try to expose the truth. Again, we have gogetfunding.com, Patreon, and Subscribestar. We appreciate any help we can get. $4.99 a month or more on Patreon or Subscribestar, as well as on X at World Alt Media. We'll get you exclusive content. So we appreciate that. We have a PayPal address, ancientwonderstelevision@gmail.com. We have a Bitcoin address that you can scan on the screen here, as well as in the description in text form. We have a Cointree link with a bunch of different cryptocurrencies that you could donate in if you please, including privacy coins. We have a Teespring store with a bunch of merchandise. Of course, you could go and subscribe to us on Rumble or BitChute at World Alternative Media, especially if you're watching on band.video. They're about to go down right away. So while we appreciate your longtime support on band.video, InfoWars has been taken down, and we won't be able to post there anymore. So we're also on things like Odyssey. Brighteon, I have an issue uploading on. There's some issues with the codec there, so I'm trying my best to get around that. It's been a whole thing for a couple of years now. Of course, we are on Telegram, Band.video, BitChute, Odyssey, Rumble, and Brighteon. If we're going to name a few, there's that's all at World Alternative Media. We're on Hive, Steemit, and Vigilante.tv at Josh Sigurdson. We're on the Bad Guys TikTok and Instagram, World Alternative Media, Twitter, and Getter at World Alt Media, and all the major podcast platforms except for Spotify, where of course we're banned. And of course, if you want to get prepared, we have heavensharvest.com, code WHAM for survival food that's organic and non-GMO. We, of course, have a bunch of different options for supplements. The Wave Watch 2.0 code WHAM will save you $100 on this with 1,100 plus frequencies. Super cool stuff. And of course, you could buy physical gold and silver over at firstnationalbullion.com/schedule-consult/ has to be that exact link to get the deals with Mark Gonzalez. So again, all that is in the description of the video. We appreciate it, my friends. And of course, as I mentioned before, hit that like button, share on social media, hit the notification bell, and hit subscribe if you have not yet already. This is Josh Sigurdson signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change.